This video describes how to successfully load sample data into VOEIS. A sample data value is an individual value or measurement that is associated with sample volume collected from some medium, such as stream water grab samples or soil core samples. Individual samples may be associated with one or more variables. For example, a single grab sample from stream water can be analyzed for dissolved organic carbon, dissolved inorganic nitrogen, or calcium concentrations. Therefore, the way data is stored within VOEIS is unique. The relationship between the individual data sample values and sample ID is preserved. The VOEIS workflow for loading data samples is constructed to load data from individual files. VOEIS currently supports comma delimited text files, CSV. These files may have one or more header rows, but the first instance of sample data values in each column must occur in the same row. The VOEIS workflow also requires that sample data input files be site-specific. A single input file must not contain data from one or more sites. Data files must include sample IDs, date or time stamps, and date sample values with one or more variables. Data must be organized to include individual columns for sample IDs, date timestamps, and variables such that a given row contains sample data values that were measured from a single sample collected at a specific date or time. If sample data is organized in a spreadsheet, it must be saved as a CSV file prior to loading data into VOEIS. Now let's begin to load some data. In the Project Name drop-down menu, select the Add Sample Data. If this option does not immediately appear in the drop-down menu, refresh your browser window and try again. In step 1 of the Data Upload Wizard, select a site that your data will be associated with from the site list. Next, browse to the file to be loaded. Click the Open button. Select the row that the data samples value begin on. For the sample upload CSV file, the data values begin on line 2. All rows above the selected line number will be ignored when the data is parsed and loaded into VOEIS. You will see an option for selecting a data template to load your data. You do not have any data templates in your project yet, so leave this option set to Create a new data template. Click the Upload file. If the file loads successfully, you will be directed to Step 2 of the workflow. In Step 2, you will define a parsing template for your data file. This template will be available for uploading similar files to different sites or to the same site in the future. First, you need to name your site. I'll leave mine sample stream. Next, you need to describe your template. This is a tutorial for loading lab sample data. Next, you need to select the appropriate source, sample type, and sample medium information. My sample type is a grab. My sample medium is a surface water. Next, you need to choose a source. To create a new source, click the green button to the left of Choose Source. Once you've populated all the fields in the dialog box, click Create Source. Now, describe the time support associated with your data file. You must identify whether your timestamps are recorded in UTC date time or local date time. If they are recorded in local date time, you need to select the UTC offset. This is the time zone correlation for the location where the measurements were collected, and identify whether or not daylight savings time adjustments needs to be applied to all timestamps in the file. The UTC offset default value is determined by the site's location. After all the fields in the sample information pane are completed, the Next button will be activated. Click Next to begin describing each of the columns in the data file. If the button does not activate, you need to go back and make sure that you assign values to all the fields. The source field cannot be set to none. Next, each of the 8 columns in the data file must be described using one of the options in the Select Column Assignment drop-down list. The options: assign the timestamp to this column, assign the sample ID to this column, and assign the vertical offset to this column may only be used once. My first column I will use sample ID. Then click Next. My second column is the timestamp. Then click Next. My third column, I can either assign an existing variable or add a new variable. The name, you can either scroll down the list or click this button to search. After I've searched nitrogen, I'll scroll down to find nitrate, NO2. The variable name is now described at the top. For my category, it's water quality. My units are micrograms per liter. And I'll click Create Variable. Then Next. In this column, I'll add a new variable. If searching does not result in my variable, I can click the green arrow and create a new variable. Then click Create Variable. After the other variables have been selected, click Create Variable. Click Next. If your data does not contain a column, you can select Ignore Variable. As columns in the data file are described, a summary table of parsing instructions is populated at the bottom of the page. Preview the summary to ensure that all the data fields are defined correctly. If you spot an error in the summary table, simply scroll to the column where the error exists and edit the column description. When all columns are described and the summary table has been checked carefully to ensure that the data file is correctly characterized, click the Save Samples button. You should be returned to your project show page and see the message "File was parsed successfully" at the top of the browser window.